Welcome to the final topic in our study of sentence structure, the compound complex sentence. Before we move on to talking about compound complex sentences, it's worth taking a few moments to review the three sentences you've already learned. The first is the simple sentence. That's just an independent clause. All that means is it's a subject and a verb that expresses a complete thought and can stand on its own. When you have two independent clauses put together, you have a compound sentence, and they're always connected using a coordinating conjunction. Remember that we often refer to coordinating conjunctions as the fanboys. Fanboys stands for and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. If you haven't taken the time to memorize the fanboys yet, I suggest you do it ASAP. The third type of sentence that you've already discussed is a complex sentence. Now, a complex sentence takes one independent clause and adds a dependent clause, also called a subordinate clause. These two kinds of clauses are connected using a subordinate conjunction, something along the lines of because, since, or while. You have mastered, or should have mastered, these three types of sentences, and now you're ready to move on to the fourth, most complicated type of sentence. The fourth type of sentence is the compound complex sentence. In a compound complex sentence, you take the elements of a compound sentence and you add them to the elements of a complex sentence. So what you end up with is a sentence that has at least two independent clauses and at least one dependent clause. It's important to note at this point that because you're connecting so many different types of clauses, you will have to use conjunctions, both subordinating and coordinating conjunctions. You will also have to use commas, but we'll get to that later. If you look at our example, after John's team won the state basketball championship, the school held a parade in their honor, and the mayor came to give them a special plaque. You'll see that the first part of the sentence is highlighted in yellow. This is our dependent clause. Take a moment to see if you understand why it's dependent. Hopefully you noticed that it begins with a subordinate clause, after. This makes it unable to stand on its own. The following two parts of the sentence, the school held a parade in their honor, and the mayor came to give them a special plaque, are independent clauses. They can stand on their own. They are connected using the fanboys coordinating conjunction and. So if you take a close look at this sentence, it's three separate clauses connected using one subordinate conjunction and one coordinating conjunction and two commas. Before we move on to discussing the use of conjunctions in compound complex sentences, I want to draw your attention to the random circle on this page. You're going to see a few of them throughout this presentation, and I just want to say I'm just learning this program, and it's 11 o'clock at night, and it would take way too long to go back and start over, so we're just going to agree to ignore them. Back to our regularly scheduled program. So, conjunctions in a compound complex sentence. Before she got the starring role in the school musical, Lainey mostly worked behind the scenes, but she always had dreams of being in the cast. It's a perfect, grammatically correct sentence because it uses conjunctions. You'll see the first conjunction is a subordinate conjunction, before, which makes the first part of the sentence a dependent clause. And then you're going to see two independent clauses connected with a fanboys coordinating conjunction. Lainey mostly worked behind the scenes. She always had dreams of being in the cast. Both of those are independent clauses and could stand alone. Voila! A compound, complex sentence. Punctuation. The number one thing students have to remember when learning to write sentences is that they have to be punctuated correctly. So here are your main things to remember when punctuating a compound complex sentence. You need to remember that all independent clauses are connected to one another using those fanboys conjunctions that I mentioned earlier. Dependent clauses that come before independent clauses are separated with a comma. Dependent clauses that come after independent clauses do not use commas. All compound complex sentences will have at least one comma. I'd like you to pause the video now and make sure you have this information written down. Okay, remember we've agreed to ignore those extra circles. In our sentence here about Muhammad and his brother, we've got a compound complex sentence because we have 3 independent clauses and 1 dependent clause correctly punctuated and connected using coordinating and subordinating conjunctions. So you've got, if you look closely, Muhammad and his brother waited in the car. This is an independent clause. It's followed by a dependent clause, while their mother ran into the grocery store. These 2 clauses are connected with the subordinate conjunction while. Notice there is no comma that connects them. That's because the dependent clause comes after an independent clause, and it's in the middle of the full sentence. Now you get down here, and you see we've got 2 fanboys coordinating conjunctions, but and so, and they are preceded or they come after the comma, connecting them. Here's another sentence. Because he likes pizza, Jeremy plans to get a job at Domino's when he is 16 so he can eat as much pizza as he wants for free. You'll notice in this sentence, a comma is used after the opening subordinate or dependent clause to separate the 2 independent clauses. Because he likes pizza is dependent on the rest of the sentence. Here is our subordinate conjunction. Because it comes at the beginning, it has to have a comma after it. Then you've got your 2 independent clauses. Jeremy plans to get a job at Domino's when he is 16. He can eat as much free pizza as he wants. Connected with our fanboys conjunction. So I'd like you to take a moment to pause the video and correctly punctuate the following compound complex sentences. So you'll see here are our answers. Until the snow melts, we won't be able to practice baseball, so we should concentrate on improving our general physical fitness. We've got our dependent clause right here, and with our subordinating conjunction. Because it comes at the beginning, it has to have a comma after it. And then we've got our 2 independent clauses. We won't be able to practice baseball, so we should concentrate on improving our physical fitness. And because we've got a fanboys coordinating conjunction, we've got a comma that separates them. Our second sentence, Marley is a talented artist, but she is shy about showing her work to others because she doesn't want to hear their criticism, has an independent clause at the beginning, Marley is a talented artist, connected with a fanboys coordinating conjunction and a comma. She is shy about showing her work to others. But then we have a dependent clause starting with the subordinating conjunction because she doesn't want to hear their criticism. There is no comma here because the subordinating conjunction is in the middle of the sentence, placing the dependent clause at the end. If the dependent clause comes at the end of the sentence, you do not use a comma. Our last example, Ashe and his friends went hiking in the woods, but they got lost, so they had to call his mom for help while she was at work, has more than 2 independent and 2 dependent clauses. You've got Ashe and his friends went hiking in the woods. This is an independent clause. It can stand on its own. It's connected to the next independent clause, they got lost, with the comma and the fanboys conjunction but. This is connected to another independent clause, so they had to call his mom for help. Another fanboys conjunction and a comma. But then you'll see we have our dependent clause, while she was at work, at the end of the sentence. So hopefully you didn't put a comma in front of it. So take a moment to label the clauses below in the following compound complex sentences as either dependent or independent. Pause the video while you do this. And here are our answers. In the first example, our teacher assigned us 6 chapters to read, but we also have a math test to study for since we just finished our unit on linear equations, so we will be busy tonight. You have 3 independent clauses and 1 dependent clause. Hopefully at this point you're starting to see that independent clauses can stand on their own and they do not have subordinating conjunctions. If you look at the middle of our sentence, since we just finished our unit on linear equations, we've got this subordinate conjunction that makes this part of the sentence unable to stand on its own and dependent on the rest of the sentence. What makes this compound complex is that there are both kinds of sentences here, compound sentences and complex sentences, all mixed into one. Example number 2. While Talia's puppy was at the vet, Talia and her mom went to PetSmart to buy a new dog bed, but they couldn't find the one they wanted. A dependent clause starting with the conjunction while, followed by an independent clause linked to a second independent clause using the fanboy but. And finally, after we played one rugby match, 3 of our best players were injured, so our hopes were not great for the rest of the season. In this case, you've got your dependent clause starting with the conjunction after, and 2 independent clauses connected with the word so. At this point, we've finished our study of compound complex sentences. Feel free to watch the video again and adjust your notes, study, and then go on to take the Moodle quiz. Good luck!